Our speaker tonight is Ben Clifton, RTB Chapter Coordinator and President of Apologetics on Mission. Ben will be telling us more about that in a little bit. Ben and his wife, Joey, live in Oregon, where they have 2 adult children. Ben off-ramped from a career in technology innovation to pursue apologetics ministry work full-time in 2017. He holds a master's degree in apologetics from Biola University, and he's traveled and presented extensively around the world. Along with Apologetics on Mission, Ben accepted the position of RTB Chapters Director in January of this year. Please join me in welcoming Ben Clifton.
So it's my privilege to talk to you about a topic that I've actually had the privilege of doing now for about 6 years. This will be a little bit different than a lot of the presentations that you're probably used to through RTB chapters, where we always get to hear some great new discovery from science and dive deep into the nitty-gritty. This will be a little bit more practical application of all this wonderful apologetics material, all this great reasons to believe in Christianity. How are some ways to apply it? And so I hope that what I can do during this talk is get you excited about the topic, which is going to be taking apologetics on mission. Let me give you a little bit of preamble. So as Kirby said, I have the privilege of actually wearing 2 hats. Since the beginning of this year, I joined Reasons to Believe on staff as the chapter's coordinator. So I get to work with all the chapter leaders and collaborate, generate ideas, and basically support thriving chapters. And I have to say, I'm very proud of what the San Jose chapter represents. You guys are an awesome chapter, and it's exciting to see all that you've been doing and what you have planned going forward. So I do have an RTB hat. So you can see I have a real RTB hat. I actually inherited this hat from my predecessor, Catherine. Some of you might know Catherine Clark, and she inherited it. Actually, if you trace the lineage, it goes all the way back to Ken Holtgren. So some of you might know Ken Holtgren. He's been with RTB forever. So this actually probably has some of Ken's DNA on it. But I'm going to take that hat off for tonight. And I don't have Apologetics on Missions hats yet, but just imagine that's the hat that I'm wearing. So as I've been on the job here with RTB for about 3 months now, there's a lot of crossover. So you might hear a little bit of crossover in what I'm going to be talking about. But I'm going to try and stay pretty focused on the Apologetics on Mission aspect of what I do. RTB, Hugh and Kathy Ross, the whole ministry has been really impactful in my walk with Christ. When I first became a Christian, I was 33 years old, and this was in 1997. My first encounter with apologetics and really the intellectual side of Christianity came from picking up a little book called The Fingerprint of God by this guy, Hugh Ross. And before I was a believer, so many of my objections were centered around questions about science, with the worldview I had that science really had made anything religious or supernatural pretty much obsolete, something of the past. And basically archaic ideas. Little did I know that after I got a taste of Hugh Ross's writings and RTB in general, I realized I came to see that the very evidence that I was using to disprove Christianity actually was proving it. And so I've been involved in RTB ever since then. I was part of starting the Portland chapter of RTB many years ago. I think it was in the early 2000s. I was chapter president for some time, and I still am engaged with the ministry in that capacity. And so when the opportunity came to join on staff as the chapter's director, I really could not say no to that. And I'm really blessed to be able to be working with the team and working with your chapter leaders, because I'm a really big fan of the opportunity that chapters have to extend the impact and reach people like I was back in 1997, thinking I had all the answers, but really being blind to the truth. And I just kind of wish that I had encountered RTB earlier in my life, because I might not have wasted so much time being a non-believer. So all that to say that I'm really indebted by RTB. I'm passionate about its mission, and I love the science aspect of it. I think it's a very powerful tool for reaching people for the gospel, and I'm blessed to be actually working full-time with RTB. So with that, what I'd like to do with you tonight is I'd like to share with you another hat that I wear, which is Apologetics on Mission. And I actually started Apologetics on Mission about 2 years ago. This was before the opportunity to join RTB came about. And RTB actually was the first ministry I approached as a partner. So before I even formally started Apologetics on Mission, I met with Hugh and Fuzz and Kathy and George and Phil and Brian, all scholars and leaders at RTB. And I explained the vision behind it and how I saw that, I could really serve RTB by being kind of the tip of the spear, taking Apologetics on Mission, taking RTB material to places where they had no idea that such resources or ideas even existed. So they were all for it. And so we're privileged, AOM is privileged to be an official partner of RTB. And so now I'm on staff. So let me share my screen here and talk to you about missional apologetics, what it is and why we should take Apologetics on Mission and how to do it. I'm going to give you some examples of how the team at Apologetics on Mission is doing this. And I'll speak in two different senses. One, I'll speak kind of generically, the general idea of going on mission, but going on mission specifically to raise apologists around the world where there aren't any apologists, to give people tools to defend the faith where they have very little resources, very little exposure to what we here in the West are so privileged to have at our fingertips. So I'll talk about that generally, but then I'll use examples of how we've been doing it here for the last couple of years through Apologetics on Mission and how that works. And like I said earlier, I'm going to try and wrap up early enough so that we can have some conversations, because I'd really like to hear from you guys what your reaction is, and if you can see yourselves in one form or another. I think that we can all be missionaries in this field of apologetics. And even if missionary means just to your own family at home or your own church community or to your chapter or where you live, you don't have to go to the ends of the world to be on mission for apologetics. Okay, so let's see. Let me start by just giving you my definition of what I mean when I say missional apologetics. And I'm going to shrink this down so you guys, there we go. So I'm just going to read this. Missional apologetics is extending the reach of defending the faith to regions where there is little awareness or access to apologetics. It is equipping local leaders to build apologetics communities in their regions. In a nutshell, it's raising Christian defenders globally. That's what I mean by missional apologetics. It's the task that comes alongside evangelizing, going on mission, taking the gospel to the ends of the earth, but it's coming alongside the evangelist to build the foundation of good reasons for why the good news that we preach really is true. And so, as you see, I'll give some reasons why this is so important and why we can't neglect the apologetics part of the overall project to build the church. We can't focus solely on evangelism. We need to bolster what we preach with the good reasons for why it's true. So that's my contention, and that's why I think that there's a exciting role to take apologetics on mission, that is to do missional apologetics. So let me elaborate a little bit more on that. So like I say, I think the church has done an excellent job and put a lot of effort towards evangelism through missions in fulfillment of the Great Commission. And this is wonderful, and we need to do more of it. But I would contend, and I've seen this with my own eyes, which is why I'm passionate to change this, that not nearly as much effort has been placed on defending the faith that we've gone on mission to preach. Okay, we have not given those people that we've evangelized the tools to safeguard the good news that we've gone and shared with them. So missional apologetics is simply the task to raise up Christian defenders globally to safeguard the investment that we're making in our evangelistic efforts. Basically, we're coming alongside, coming behind maybe even the evangelists to support them with apologetics. Okay, that's what missional apologetics is all about. So let me kind of concisely say what the problem is that we are trying to solve with missional apologetics, the problem that we're trying to solve by taking apologetics on mission. So this problem is everywhere, it's globally, but I'm going to focus on places beyond the West. So when I say beyond the West, I mean places like Africa, places like Southeast Asia, India maybe, the Pacific Isles, South America, Latin America. So outside the West, there's a dangerous lack of awareness and training. So awareness and training, you'll hear me say that multiple times, but there's a dangerous lack of awareness and training in defending the Christian faith, in doing apologetics. And this is leaving global leaders unprepared to resist the cultural tide of anti-biblical worldviews that threaten the next generation. So this is kind of the problem statement that we developed actually for apologetics on mission, and I'm using it to illustrate a number of points here. So there's a huge cultural tide of anti-biblical, that is non-Christian worldviews. And it's threatening everybody. It's threatening the church, but primarily the most vulnerable are the next generation. Okay, the younger people who may be growing up in the church, but when we have not prepared them with good answers for why what we've taught them to believe is true, when they go out on their own and get challenged, they don't have answers to those challenges, and too many of them are walking away. So, around the world, those challenges are coming from multiple different directions. And so this little cartoon just shows kind of a sense of where the next generation is getting assaulted. And in developing nations, in developing countries, this is happening really rapidly thanks to a really great thing called the internet and accessibility to smart devices, to cell phones and whatnot that give people, and particularly the next generation, easy access to the internet has just caused a flood of Western secularism to, come into their communities, to come into their churches, to come into their universities, and ultimately to come into their nations. And it's coming in very many different forms. So that's part of the problem. So we, as the church, need to be putting a lot more emphasis on safeguarding all of those challenges, on giving answers to the challenges that these different things are presenting. Let me just give you some examples of the type of challenges that people, and I'll give some concrete examples. Even in kind of the middle of nowhere in Western Uganda, in Africa, this is the heart of Africa, we see these type of challenges to their faith just prevalent. We see false religions and syncretism creeping into the church. And by false religions, I mean not only religions like Islam, but also cults of Christianity, perversions of Orthodox Christianity coming in. We see syncretism, where African traditional religions are being blended with Christianity to make a mess of things. So that's a big problem. Western secularism and all that it entails, like I say, is flooding through the portals of cell phones and the internet, in particular the younger generation. It's generating distrust of the Bible as a source of authority. As the developing countries become more and more educated through a more Western education, the students are getting exposed to great science, but in the wrong hands, this can turn into scientism, the belief that science really has all of the answers, and that through science we no longer can trust anything religious or superstitious or anything spiritual or anything that's not physical. There's challenges of human identity, and particularly sexuality. You guys are so aware of the cultural challenges facing the church here in the West, particularly in the area of human sexuality. Those challenges are there, in developing nations, not quite as strong as they are here. And the impact hasn't quite reached the shores of developing countries, but it's coming very rapidly. The problem of evil and suffering. Many developing nations are poor, and as a result, there's a lot of suffering. And that always raises questions about where is this good, all-loving, all-powerful God when I'm suffering and when I don't have access to medical care and I'm hungry or whatever. So the problem of evil and suffering can be particularly real and something that is experienced in developing poor nations. There's apathy. Without Christ, there's no true hope, and that lack of hope can lead to apathy. And then our entertainment culture. Oh my goodness, the entertainment culture is just rife with anti-biblical worldviews, and how it's been here in the West is that somehow we've allowed the entertainment culture to really be an instrument of propagating those anti-biblical worldviews, both subtly and not so subtly. And that entertainment culture is definitely alive and well beyond the West. Again, thanks to the technology that allows our entertainment channels to reach, into the jungles of South America. So I could go on, but there's clearly a lot of problems. And this all, as I mentioned earlier, is really accelerated, massively accelerated by the ubiquitous access to the internet. And it's especially affecting the next generation. So this is a big concern, because it doesn't take too many generations to completely lose the footing and lose all the hard work that we've done in evangelizing. So the result of all this is that in the global church, and the global church, I'm saying, is beyond the West, but even in the West, as we well know, too many of the next generation who are raised in the church and who are exposed to the gospel as they grow up, they're abandoning their faith as they leave home. And a lot of the reason is, I contend, is that we haven't properly equipped them with the foundational reasons for why what we've taught them is true. We've told them what to believe. We haven't done a good job telling them why it's true. Okay, so, gosh, that sounds pretty bleak, but there is a solution. So the solution is, or at least part of the solution, is missional apologetics. And the role of missional apologetics is to raise awareness of apologetics through accessible training, and to equip global leaders to engage the next generation in affirming biblical Christianity and exposing flawed ideologies. That's a mouthful. It's basically saying that we need to make people aware that apologetics exists. It's an important role of the church to practice. And in order to do that, we really need to train and equip global leaders so that they can both have answers for themselves, but so that they are equipped to be able to give good answers to the next generation as they face challenges. So when we do this, global communities of leaders are mobilized, and they are equipped to contend for faith in Jesus Christ and to empower the next generation to do the same. So when we take apologetics on mission, when we build relationships, when we do the training, we work with them to build these apologetics communities there, they are equipped to do what we're privileged to do even this evening in the context of RTB chapters. And as you know, there's so many wonderful ministries here in the West that we have such easy access to and we have good awareness of. We are blessed in that respect. So we have great answers for the challenges that face us, and we can use those. And that's why ministries like Reasons to Believe exist. But we need to take this to places where there is little awareness and little opportunity to be trained in it. Okay, so what is, I'm going to shift a little bit from the general problem and talk a little bit about how we at Apologetics on Mission are trying to, we're recognizing the problem, we're identifying the solution and trying to implement it. So everything we found that, especially in developing nations, and I would say most of our experience so far is in Africa, although we're growing rapidly in Latin America, specifically in Brazil. But it all starts with building relationships. You have to have trusting relationships to be able to do anything in this arena. So a lot of the work is networking and meeting people and developing trusting relationships so that you can start planning on ways to raise awareness, ways to start doing some training and doing projects together that that really serve to equip those regions with apologetics. So relationships are key. Raising awareness. Here in America, the average churchgoer probably has a little bit of, familiarity with apologetics, not as much as we'd like, but at least there's some. There are parts of the world where the concept of apologetics is just not even on anybody's radar. And so it begins by raising awareness that apologetics exists, that it's biblically mandated, and that it's a critical thing for the church to do to preserve the investment that we're making, especially into the lives of the next generation. We need to do training. So, what you get to learn through the resources of RTB and through chapter meetings all serve to equip you so that you're ready to give answers to the faith that you have, to the hope that you have. And likewise, for apologetics communities to be built up around the world, they need trained leaders. And so part of what we recognize is that we've got to start and raise up people that we can call pillars in their communities in apologetics. I'll talk a little bit more about what that means. Not only do we need people who are trained at a lay level in apologetics, but for really long-term and sustainable communities of apologists, we need to have a way for them to be able to pursue advanced degrees in apologetics, where they can get the academic background that is really critical for them to be addressing the problems in their particular culture at a high degree of sophistication. Now, not everybody needs to have a degree, of course, but we do need some of them. We need the Hugh Rosses and the Fuzz Ranas of Africa and Brazil. So it's great that we have Hugh Ross himself and Fuzz Rana and so many other established pillars doing apologetics, doing great work in generating resources here in the West. That needs to be multiplied in developing nations. So we do need people who have some kind of academic degree specifically in apologetics. Okay, and that all is aiming towards the goal that we see, and that is self-sustaining local ministries. So we want to be able to be catalysts to raise awareness, to build relationships, to do some initial training, but our ultimate goal is to plant apologetics in a region, grow it up with leaders on the ground there that can then take that effort and make it their own in their own communities. We want to see ministries like Reasons to Believe, like Reasonable Faith, like Stand to Reason, like all these wonderful ministries that we have. We want to see those grow in the global regions that currently have very few such ministries. And so our ultimate goal is to obsolete taking apologetics on mission to that region. We want to take it and grow it up so that they can sustain it themselves. We want to become long-term partners and be invited back to work with them, but we don't want to be the gating item for their growth and their success in their local communities. So let me talk a little bit about some of the key things that make this work. What do we need to do, and how do we need to do it, and what are the tools that we have at our disposal? So you've heard me say training and awareness. Those are really at the top, just raising awareness of what apologetics is, what the resources are, and why it's important in the church. Following that is always okay. I'm aware. I see the need. I see the opportunity. Now we need training. We need training and we need resources. We need to be able to be conversant in the various aspects of apologetics, and we need to have resources to be able to share that with other people. We need to mentor these leaders, guide them. You know, we've been blessed. We've had a lot of experience ourselves. We've had RTB at our disposal. Many of us have followed Hugh and Kathy and Fuzz and Jeff for many years, and we've kind of grown up with them. The leaders in the places that we go have none of that background. And so they need a lot of hand-holding, especially as they start to become more and more self-sustainable. We need to collaborate with them. This is all about working together. No one ministry, no one organization is going to be able to do this. We need to all work together. And so that requires a lot of collaboration, which gets back to the relationship thing that I started with. And again, ultimately, we're headed towards self-sustainability. We want to come alongside, catalyze these leaders, get them aware, get them trained, mentor them up, work with them, but all to that end goal that, you know, sometime in the future, we can look back and see a reasons to believe type of organization coming out of Zimbabwe, because we've gone and planted the seeds, done the training, done the mentoring, and so that now there's ministries on the ground. And, you know, the goal there is that those ministries on the ground would then be partnering with ministries like Reasons to Believe to, you know, increase the global coverage of all of this. We all need to be working together. All these ministries leaders need to be working together. What are some of the activities that go into missional apologetics? Well, short-term missions serve a variety of purposes. So we go for 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a time. We've gone as short as 1 week. And those are relationship building missions. They're opportunities for us to host and conduct conferences, both in churches and in universities that raise awareness of apologetics in general. We host and pull together leaders in regions and really give a listening ear to those leaders to hear what kind of challenges they face, what the challenges their communities face as questions are asked and people are walking away from the faith. What are the reasons that they're doing so? And so leader summits provide a good opportunity for us to listen and then work with the leaders that we're developing in plans on how we move this forward. Those plans can include conferences and seminars. Every time I go to Africa or Brazil, we're always doing some kind of conference or seminar. And in fact, I'm going to be leaving in 10 days to go back to Brazil. And we're going to do a weekend seminar in apologetics to a large group of leaders. We'll talk a little bit more about that. In terms of training, one of the first things we discovered, this was early on, through the leader summits that we hosted in East Africa, where we pulled together leaders from Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda and listened. Really, the number one thing that they needed was a certificate level training that would give their leaders a solid foundation in just basic apologetics, spanning the multiple aspects of apologetics so that they could be conversant with other apologists around the world. They would understand the concepts, they would understand some of the lingo and terminology, and they'd have a basic familiarity with the core aspects of apologetics. And that includes stuff like, of course, science apologetics. It includes history, it includes archaeology, It includes, specific things around the resurrection, the reliability of Scripture, et cetera, philosophical arguments for the existence of God, kind of a general overview of apologetics. And so we actually offer a 16-week program through AOM, and that provides that foundational training that gets people at first base as far as their equipping. Longer term, we need to establish these degree programs that I mentioned earlier, where people in those regions have access to a minor in apologetics, a bachelor's degree in apologetics, ultimately to master's level programs in apologetics. And then finally, as we strive for that self-sustainability, we need to continue to be mentoring the ministries that are birthed around apologetics and this leadership development, this training, this mentoring that we're doing. So those are the type of activities that we're currently doing in service to missional apologetics through Apologetics on Mission. Here's some of the tools. We have lots of tools at our disposal. I gotta say, Zoom has been a world changer, especially for international ministry work, mission work, because it allows us to way more effectively carry on the work that we start when we go on the ground. So that second thing, international travel, that allows us to get places. And honestly, while it's expensive, it's not unattainable. And the return on investment is just huge. When you consider how much you could spend even on a used car and compare that to being able to travel to some place like Uganda or Rwanda fairly easily. It's a little bit hard on your body, but you get used to it. But being there on the ground is just so critical in building relationships and getting things started. But with tools like Zoom and the ability to instantly message through platforms like WhatsApp, we can continue that work like real time all the time. So like even today, this morning, I was getting a lot of WhatsApp messages from my brothers and sisters in Uganda, where we're preparing for our next mission there. Other technology, oh my goodness, YouTube. I know YouTube is full of nasty stuff, but it is a wealth of resources if you know where to look. So for somebody, living in a developing country that has no apologetics ministries on the ground for them to turn to, steering them to YouTube channels. The Reasons to Believe YouTube channel is an awesome resource for somebody in Western Uganda to be able to tune into and learn so much. Churches and ministry partners and academic partners are critical, and these are tools in our tool belt to raise up these Christian defenders globally. Let me talk a little bit about some specifics about what Apologetics on Mission is actually doing. And again, it's not one ministry, so I'm using Apologetics on Mission as an example, but I would love to see lots of ministries like Apologetics on Mission taking this great apologetics material around the world. So just in the last couple of years, we've done 3 short-term missions to East Africa and 1 to Brazil. I think I just mentioned we're going back to Brazil on the tail of our first trip to Brazil, and we're going back because there was such a high demand for us to go back. So we planted the seed, we kind of lit the spark, and the communities that we've intersected with are really excited about this. So we're going to actually do an intensive version of our training course that's going to happen over 4 days. It's a 16-week program usually, but we're going to cram it all into 4 days in Belo Horizonte, Brazil. We've done 2 terms of this course that we teach. We call it the Introduction to International Apologetics. And we throw in that international word because really what we want to do is we want to equip the students who graduate from this course with the ability to have conversations with other apologists around the world and speak a common language, have a general familiarity about the key aspects of apologetics. In 16 weeks, you can't cover everything and you can't cover it very deeply, but you can touch on the major stepping stones of apologetics. And what we are finding is the students, after they get exposed to this, they're just all the more hungry for the next round. And they want to learn more about the subjects that we've dealt with. They want to dive deeper into them. And then they want to cover other topics that haven't been addressed in our course. So far, we're going to be graduating about 30 students through these 2 terms. And that's like really awesome to see. We've conducted a leader summit in East Africa, and we intend to do another one in Brazil here fairly soon. We've done multiple conferences in both Africa and in Brazil. We've actually partnered with 7 apologetics ministries so far. One of them is RTB. Ratio Christi is another one of our partner ministries. And there are some young apologetics ministries in some of the regions that we are serving, and we're partnering with them. We've partnered with multiple churches and developed relationships with 6 academies. And that last one, the 6 academies, we're putting a pretty strong effort in the next year. And part of our next trip to Africa is really going to be focused on this, is we're trying to catalyze a relationship between a apologetics degree granting seminary here in the US. If I mention the name, you'd all say, oh, we know them. And some universities in East Africa to co-develop a degree program in partnership. And we're excited. Boy, it'll be really great if that happens. I mentioned, the end goal is really to equip these leaders such that they are ready to birth their own ministries in their own regions. And that's actually happening in Uganda. So we're working with a team of leaders who are in the process of creating the equivalent of a 501c nonprofit in Uganda. We don't know what the name is going to be, but we're going under the kind of placeholder Apologetics Uganda. And so once this ministry is birthed, they will represent a great and growing ministry that has a great future ahead of them. And these young leaders are just on fire to take what they've learned and take it to their communities. We're a very small team and we need a lot of help. So we've been successful in engaging multiple volunteers to help the missions that we're doing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So I'm going to share a few, let's see, what time is it? Okay, got about 15 more minutes, I think. I'm going to share just a couple sort of slideshow videos. First one I'm going to kind of narrate because it just is a basic slideshow that gives you a picture of what it looks like to go on mission specifically for apologetics. So let's see here. I'm going to try and play it from my PowerPoint. I'm going to pause here occasionally and just talk through it. So this picture here, this guy here, let me get my little, not my annotate, where's my little, you guys see my mouse? Well, I'm just going to, yeah, okay.
We see it. We see it.
All right, so this is Jemba. Jemba is graduated from our apologetics course in November. He is a doctor He's doing his residency right now. And like I say, these guys, once they get a taste of this, they want to share it. So he's at a high school here. This is in Uganda, and he is preaching to a bunch of high school kids. There's probably about 500 there, giving them their first taste of even the opportunity to ask questions about their faith. I mean, it's kind of weird for us to think, but in some cultures, and particularly here, asking questions about your faith is just not done. And so it's a new thing just for them to have the freedom and the opportunity to even pose questions about their faith. And these young leaders here that we've trained are encouraging them to ask those questions and prepared to give them answers. So that's Jemba in Uganda. This is from Brazil. That was our first trip in Brazil. Sorry, I think I jumped ahead. So our first trip in Brazil, we were in a place called Belo Horizonte, very hilly city of about 1 million people, completely different than Africa, much more affluent, much more, technologically advanced. And the question we came away with is, why isn't there apologetics being done here already? And it's because there's just a lack of awareness. People just don't know about it. And so when we kind of open the doors and start talking about it, the leaders of the churches that we intersect with get really excited. And that's why we're going back. And they recognize the need, they see the opportunity, and they realize they need training, and that's step one. Here's Moses here. He's talking to some, again, a lot of the activity that the people that we've been training have been to. They have like such great access to like the high schools. So here, I mean, trying to get an RTB team to go to a high school, that's like pulling teeth, and it's probably illegal. You probably get thrown in jail. In Uganda, it's an open door and they welcome you in. So it's a great opportunity to speak to the young people there. Here's Doug. Doug is one of the AOM's, he's actually our academic director, and he's teaching here in Brazil. You guys might recognize, I don't know if you can see it, but you might recognize this guy here. If you can see him, that's Greg Kokel. So before the pandemic, I actually had the privilege of partnering with Stand to Reason and taking Greg to Western Uganda and having him give the Columbo tactic, in his garb in Western Uganda was pretty funny. Needless to say, it needed a little bit of cultural contextualizing to make the point come across. Here we are back in Brazil. Here's Moses again, preaching to a bunch of teenagers. Here's the contrast. Let me just back that up a sec. So this is in Brazil, and the Lord has opened up the door for Apologetics on Mission at this massive church. This church has grown in the last 20 years from 400 people to about 20,000. And they've grown it by growing through home groups. So they've really been successful in a home group model where Sundays are the occasion for the home groups to all get together as the body, but generally they're doing things throughout the week through their home groups. And this is the largest church in Belo Horizonte, and this is the church we're going back to in a couple of weeks to train in apologetics. So, and a church this big, they've never really heard of apologetics, and they've never done anything in apologetics. And needless to say, they have zero training in apologetics. And sadly, their young people are leaving in droves, as you can imagine. Brazil is going through a major cultural shift right now. They just recently had an impactful election, and so they need all the help they can get in terms of preserving their next generation. Oh, here we are, just lots of leaders. Oops, sorry, I keep doing that. Keep hitting the wrong button here. Where was I? Here I am in Rwanda after doing some presentation and fielding questions and working with a group of about 50 leaders. And again, first exposure they've had to apologetics. And it goes without saying, once they get a taste of it, they can't get enough. They're really excited about it and really hungry for more training, more training, more training. When can you come back? When can we join your class? When can you do a presentation on Zoom? Just a lot of hunger for that. Let's see, here's one of our students here. Again, you see a lot of these kind of pictures. This is a wonderful young man, Jackson, and he's speaking to about 500. This is at a girls' school. It's a girls' middle school, and talking about apologetic things. And that's a very new thing for them, but I'm just so encouraged to see the response from these young ladies and the hunger that they have once the conversation starts. Good food in Brazil, by the way. Darn it, I did it again. Sorry about that. This is our other co-founder, Kristen Davis. You're going to start hearing more and more about Kristen Davis. She is literally just graduating with her PhD, and her topic is artificial intelligence. And she's a programmer herself, and she's also a graduate of Biola's MA program in apologetics. And she has a real gift in this field of artificial intelligence, which is so important these days. So we're out here. This again is Western Uganda, talking to leaders about the impact of artificial intelligence that the Ugandans can expect here in the next couple of years. Let's see. Here I am doing some teaching. Here we are back in Brazil. This is the Leaders Summit where we're gathering info from leaders. I'm going to pause here. My co-founder, Doug, here is actually a 2-star retired Army general. And so he has, in addition to his work with Apologetics on Mission, he does a tremendous amount internationally with military personnel through a wide variety of organizations. And so he's had the privilege of doing apologetics specifically for military personnel around the world. And that is a huge harvest field. So we're excited to be able to work with people not only in the armed services, but the police and other security organizations. All right. So I have more videos. I'm not going to spend time on them. I'm going to point you to our website, and you can look at some additional video clips. I think the one that's up there most readily right now is extended little highlights from our recent trip to Brazil. All right, so now I'm going to wrap up by saying, well, how can you be a missional apologist? Hopefully I've stirred a little bit of excitement about the opportunity out there and the need out there. And I just have to say, it's really fun. It's really cool to be able to not only go, now that's fun, but even just to host Zoom classes and meetings with our brothers and sisters around the world is just such an exciting thing to do. So how can you do it? Well, number one is Reasons to Believe chapter people, you already are doing it. Okay, you guys are missionaries as you come together in contexts like this. You're being equipped, and all of that knowledge that you're being fed can be used to answer people's questions about the hope that you have. So you already are. And really, the question I think we should always be asking ourselves is, where is apologetics needed but not happening? I mean, I can say that, In the schools around my house, apologetics is needed tremendously, but it's not happening. Sadly, in most of the churches where I live, apologetics is needed, but not happening. How can we change that? How can you change that? That's always a good question, because I think the Lord always has opportunities for us to not only go and proclaim the good news, but doing so by providing good reasons for why it's true, I think is a real privilege and an opportunity. And I think it's a biblical mandate. So specifically, I'm just going to give you some ideas for you to think about. You can join us in one form or another. So I welcome you to subscribe to our email. So we send out periodic email updates, giving you more details about what we're doing, what's coming up. You can join our praise and prayer team. We've got a lot to praise about, and we've got a lot of prayer needs as well. And so we have a specific team that we post just a few prayers and a few praises that you can lift up to the Lord on our behalf. Many of you are very well equipped to teach, to present. So we have an abundance of opportunities to do that. So that could be in the form of teaching just one of our classes out of our 16-week course. So if you happen to really love talking about the Kalam cosmological argument and why the Big Bang supports the premise that the universe began to exist, that's a class that I just taught last Saturday. And in fact, this Saturday, in less than 12 hours, I'm going to be teaching more of that. I'm going to be teaching about the fine-tuning in the universe. And I'm teaching it to students all over the world. We have students in Rwanda, in Uganda, in Kenya, and Brazil. And we even have a few students here in the US. We typically limit the number of US students, but these happen to be Ratio Christi leaders who have asked to join our class. And so we've welcomed them into that. If you have a specific topic that you really love to present, we have hungry ears and minds that want to hear that. So there's opportunity to share what you've been blessed with your brothers and sisters around the world. And again, I have to say it's really thrilling to be able to present, to teach, and to encourage our brothers and sisters in this way. You can volunteer your skills. I'll point you to some opportunities there. And for sure, you can go on a mission trip with us. That's probably the most ambitious part of it, but we have need for fellow missionaries to come with us and do this work. So where do you find out about all this stuff? Well, go to our website. So it's a really long word, but it is self-explanatory. Apologeticsonmission.org is where you go. There's a picture of the website. And let's see. Before I do Q&A, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop share here. And I'm just going to real time here go to our website and point out a few things. So let me, hang on a sec. Let me just pull up our website. See if this works. Okay, Apologetics on Mission. All right, there we are. So you can learn about us here, but here's where I want to point you. Number one, go to the Connect, name, email. That's all we really need. So if you give us your name and email, we will connect back with you, and you can give us a little message here, and you can check all that apply. So you can get our monthly updates. You can get our praise and prayer message. If you're interested in teaching a course with us, or if you're interested in taking a course, if you're interested in going on mission with us, and if you happen to be already outside the West, let us know. And this all happens through relationship building with people on the ground that invite us. And so connecting with us this way is the first step. I'll also point you to this equip, which describes our course. So like I say, Introduction to International Apologetics. And I'm just going to briefly show you, this is for the current term that's going on right now. We're about 3/4 of the way done, but it gives you a syllabus, and this will give you an idea of the type of topics that we cover in the 6 weeks. I think I just said we're on the 13th class tomorrow morning, so I'm going to give the second of 2 parts of scientific arguments for theism, for Christian theism. And here is where I lean very heavily on the work of Reasons to Believe. Back up here, we do 2 sections of worldview. And again, we lean heavily on the work of Ken Samples. So we're injecting a lot of Reasons to Believe content through our class here. So again, if one of these classes strikes your fancy, if you happen to be good at biblical archaeology, connect with us and let's talk. Maybe you'd have the opportunity to spend about 90 minutes on Zoom with our students and share your knowledge there. Let's see. Last but not least, let's see, boy, this is kind of hard. I'm going to move this. If you go to this join and scroll down, we actually have a number of open positions, both volunteer. Most of them are volunteer because we are a small young ministry. We don't have a lot of money, but we do have some funds for some paid positions. So we're looking for apologetics lecturers. That would be teachers. We're looking for an administrator to help out with a bunch of the ministry tasks. We're looking for some Marcom, marketing communications help, some website help, and some social media help. So, all right. Okay. Went a few minutes over, but let me just open it up to discussion, Q&A. Hit me with anything you got.
Yeah, I had a question here.
Yeah.
So it seems to me, I mean, it's something needed and something that we resonate with being part of RTB, but it seems to me it's a huge task to do this internationally in different cultures. You know, the kind of things that someone in a Muslim context faces and someone in a Buddhist context and a Hindu context are all different.
That's right.
And how to train each of those to answer questions in their own context, I think would be really difficult.
Well, here's what we've learned. So there's a lot of truth behind what you're saying, but what we've learned is that there's a surprising amount of common denominator. So, and a lot of this is because of, like I said, so much of the culture is changing so rapidly, especially with the next generation in developing nations, that a lot of the challenges that they face are very similar to the type of challenges that we might face here, that our young people might face here. Challenges from, like I listed, the issue of human sexuality is a huge issue right now, even in places that you wouldn't imagine. They're getting good science education, but it's coming from, for the most part, an atheistic scientism worldview. And so they're getting challenged by precisely the type of answers that RTB does so well at answering. When it gets into specifics like the false religions of, say, Islam, yes, you're right. We do need to contextualize it more. We need to focus on the needs of the particular region. And this is really why, ultimately, because it is such a huge task, our goal is to plant the seeds, but then let them on the ground grow what we've planted, and then they do that hard work. They develop the specific priorities that their region really is faced with. So if it's an area where there's a lot of challenge from Islam, we'll train them up on the general principles of apologetics. We'll talk a little bit about the false religions in the course, and then for them, we'll need to spend some time, in a specific subcourse dealing, specifically with Islam. And for that, we'll need to bring in partners who have expertise in that region. So yes, it is a big project. It needs to be contextualized, which is the very reason we need to build up communities there on the ground who could do that work. But to get started, they need to know what apologetics even means. We're starting so often at ground zero. So we've got to start somewhere. And that's kind of what Apologetics on Mission is doing. And finding great fruit. I mean, it's really, the doors are just continually opening for us, and we've got way more work than our little team right now can handle.
Is there a language problem, Ben? I had the sense that you're basically working with audiences that speak English pretty well.
Yes. So this is a big question. So is there a language problem? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that that for long-term sustainability, places that for whom English isn't the main language, or there's not broad fluency, they're going to need resources in English. In their local language. So yes, it is a challenge. On the other hand, we're finding that the majority of the people that we're working with tend to be a little bit more professional, better educated, and already fluent enough with English that this is because they've already got a good educational background. They tend to be fairly young, and so again, it points to there's no way that I personally am going to learn a whole bunch of languages to go and teach apologetics in non-English speaking regions. But what I can do is I can train the English speaking leaders in that region who speak the language. And again, just like contextualizing it for the region, they can translate, they can communicate it in the language. So that just points again to the strategy that we have of planting the seeds, working with the leaders who do speak English. When we go to Brazil, we do have translation. So there's enough people there that we want to touch, that we do translation. Now, fortunately, they have the resources that they have people that can do simultaneous translations. So as we're teaching, they are translating as we go. We don't have to do that back and forth thing. So yeah, it is a problem, but for the target emerging leaders that we're trying to reach, it's much less of a problem than you'd imagine. John, I see your hands raised. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, very, very interesting talk. I think
Thank you.
A very bold objective here for a small team.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, I'm hearing for the first time. I got a series of questions. I hope you don't mind if I just ask some of it.
Yeah,
So
go for it.
first of all, how many paid staff do you have in this organization?
At the moment, 0. We're all volunteers.
Okay. All volunteer. How many volunteers do you have then?
We have
Active.
active volunteers. We have 5 active volunteers.
Wow. That's pretty small. And
It's very small.
yeah, and with such an ambitious goal, it just seems like it's echoing what Kurt had mentioned earlier. And you're able to do some of these specific things. It's a wonderful thing that you've been able to accomplish that. Now, then I have a question: why Brazil and Africa or Uganda?
Ultimately, it's because the Lord opened up amazing opportunities in both of those regions, and we stepped through them. So in Africa, the opportunity that I had was in 2017. I went to Western Uganda for the very first time. I had no intention of doing any apologetics when I went. It was a completely different mission. But lo and behold, I discovered just in like the briefest mention of how apologetics had played a role in my testimony. Sunday morning, they invited me up. Hey, give your testimony. I touched a little bit. And after that, there was a young lady in the congregation. She came up afterwards and said, "Hey, Ben, I really loved your testimony, especially when you said apologetics, because I really want to learn about apologetics." She had heard a little bit about apologetics from some source. It turns out, and you have to imagine, I'm in basically a tin roof church out in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And this lady walks up to me and she says, "Yes, I'm completing my PhD in molecular biology. And when I'm done with that, I really want to pursue apologetics." And I literally couldn't believe it. I said, "Am I hearing you right?" So it did turn out that this lady is now one of the leading virologists in Kampala, Uganda. And sadly, she is too busy. I keep trying to get her to embark on the Biola program, but she's just too busy with her job to do that. But it's still on her heart. Anyway, I say all that, I give that story because that incident opened my eyes that even out here in the middle of nowhere, from my perspective, there was somebody there that was interested. Now, once I started having conversations with her and she said, "Hey, let's sit down with this youth group that I've got, and why don't you share some more about that?" So I started talking more and more, and they were just like lighting up on this. That community happens to be in a little town that has a training university hospital. So there's a bunch of young doctors, nurses, pharmacists to be that are going to the church that we were at. So they asked if they could, learn some more. And I happened to be teaching apologetics at a little Bible college here in Oregon. And I approached the dean there and I said, "You know what? I'm teaching this course. Would you be okay if I use Skype?" And this was before Zoom. "If I use Skype to welcome a couple students from Uganda in?" And they said, "Sure." So I did that. I had 10 students that faithfully went through 15 weeks of a intro to apologetics course that they Skyped in every week. I can't remember what time it was for them, but it was really late. And they were my best students. And so they actually are the core of the team that is going to be launching Apologetics Uganda here in the next 6 months.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So along this line, there's quite a bit of a intersection of purpose and mission with RTB organization, which is a bigger organization than Apologetics on Mission.
Slightly.
And with you coming on board as the director of chapter coordinator, and I'm sure all the scholars at RTB are familiar with what your organization is doing. And I wonder if you could share what are their comments, what are their interests? Do they see common intersection of mission or any future partnership with your organization?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. And earlier I said that before I even formed this ministry, RTB was the first big ministry that I approached to explain the vision and to elicit their support as a partner. And even before, I officially did this, whenever issues of science apologetics arose, of course, I turned to RTB and said, hey, look, RTB is this great ministry, and here's all their resources, and we're going to learn about how science and faith intersect. So Hugh and Kathy and Fuzz were aware of Apologetics on Mission before it even formed. I actually had a Zoom call while I was in Uganda with that executive team, kind of giving them a bird's eye view of what was happening. So it's pretty remarkable that that now I'm actually on staff. So in a nutshell, I see the chapter endeavor as being on mission for apologetics, right? It's just more focused nationally here in the US, where most of the chapters are. But as you know, RTB is expanding and hopes to expand significantly internationally. I hope that I can continue to play a part both in my role as a chapter person, helping chapters grow and thrive, but also in partnership with Reasons to Believe, being kind of the tip of the spear. So we are small and nimble. We can go. We have relationships. I would love to bring RTB scholars and visiting scholars and chapter leaders and anybody who has a passion for this vision and has some amount of equipping and skills that want to go and do this. Because as Kirk pointed out, this is a huge project and we're a small team. But yes, in partnership with ministries like Reasons to Believe, I think we can do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to bug off because I don't want to. I see several other hands already raised, but later on maybe I'll come back and ask you some more questions.
Yeah, and be free. I am available as a RTB, as the RTB chapter coordinator. You know how to get a hold of me through that. You can get a hold of me through AOM as well.
Tom Kennedy, I think you're next. You need to unmute.
Okay, I'm unmute.
Yeah. Yes,
unmuted.
okay, good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Great presentation, very interesting. It seems in your presentation, the emphasis was on building up teams of apologetics instructors in each of these countries. And I'm wondering, is that really, is that sort of the whole focus or the primary focus of Apologetics on Mission? Or are you also thinking about, kind of having a web-based resource where people can come from all different countries and plug in? The reason I'm asking is, it just seems very resource intensive to go to these different countries, and you would have, you had this wonderful opportunity in Uganda or wherever, or in Brazil, but how many countries are you going to, have a door like that open? And if there were only a small handful of people in some country and they were just students, they weren't really, looking to become leaders, but just wanted to be students, is there an intention that AOM would be sort of like this, like a online university for apologetics?
That's a good observation. And I use this illustration, and I hope it helps. We think of ourselves as like catalysts. So think of, what is the role of a catalyst in a chemical reaction, right? You have different chemical components that are floating around, but not really doing anything until you put that catalyst in, and all of a sudden the reaction happens. So yes, I think there's a huge hunger and need out there in the developing world for apologetics, the church in particular, the next generation specifically. And they are just not aware, and they have, no training, so that they don't even know to look for a ministry like Reasons to Believe or Ratio Christi or anything like that. So there's a lot of great organizations already doing awesome apologetics work. Our role is to be that catalyst to kind of awaken the awareness and then make that reaction. So we're, a huge part of what we do in our courses is introduce our students to those resources. Say, here's a video from Reasonable Faith. Watch these videos on, the fine tuning. Here's a great video from, Reasons to Believe, etc. So we're connecting them to the Western, resources. Our goal is really not so much to raise up, trainers, as it is to raise up leaders who can carry on the apologetics work in their communities. Mm-hmm. So we envision, our graduates, the purpose of our training course is really just to get them started, just get them to first base, so that then they can be thinking about starting their own ministry, like Apologetics Uganda. They can think about going to school and getting an advanced degree, so that when they come back into that ministry, they're more equipped. They can do the work that is huge in contextualizing all the resources that we have, maybe even translating the resources we have and getting it out to their communities. They can be the workers on the ground that are going to the high schools and talking to those young ladies that you saw in the picture and awakening them to, this amazing thing that what we believe has solid reasons behind it. Mm-hmm. So that's really our role. We're catalysts. So you're right. We can't do it. The task is way too big. But like a catalyst, even a little thing can make a big difference. Mm-hmm. You mentioned too, I'll say this last thing, do we want to create that network? I think that network will happen organically. The work that we do, we end up, after we've touched these people, they get plugged in. And so they not only start plugging into the resources that we're familiar with, they start having a vision for themselves. Let me give you an example. There's a ministry that's about 3 years old. It's called Apologetics Kenya. And those guys are going gangbusters, and they are growing very rapidly. In fact, we're going to be partnering with them on a conference in about a month. And all of this stuff can be done on the ground by going in person, but a lot of it can be happening virtually like we're doing right now. So it's really an amazing time to be doing this.
Right. One reason why I'm asking specifically about virtual stuff is from the point of view of someone who wants to volunteer, but who is, like thinking, well, I'm not going to be able to go to Uganda or, whatever, but they have time and skills. And so they want to, do things online. Will you be making use of people that have that,
absolutely,
that situation?
Absolutely. So if any one of you out there, like I said, if you wanted to teach one of our classes out of the 16-week course, I use the example of biblical archaeology, but it could be science, it could be any number of the topics that you saw on that syllabus. If you have a special presentation that you want to give, we have an audience. So yes, in the comfort of your living room on Zoom, you can reach out to students all around the world that we're working with, and they'd love to hear you.
Right. And one other quick little sort of aspect of this, I'm presently doing a Bible reading ministry with some folks in Korea. It's not Bible study, it's just Bible reading. And a lot of people are joining this ministry just because they want English language instruction. They want practice speaking English. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
it's
awesome.
an opportunity for them to speak with a native speaker and just get better at English. And so that's kind of a pitch that they're using in Korea. It's like, hey, come read the Bible and you'll learn to speak English. And so I'm wondering if there's any aspect like that with apologetics, where you're saying to, say, younger people, hey, we'll talk about apologetics, we'll talk about these things, but you'll also be, developing English conversation skills, which of course, have great, young people have great desire for that because of, jobs and opportunities and stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant idea. I love the idea of leveraging the hunger to practice English, and what better thing to practice on than the Bible, than the Word of God. Sounds great. Applying it to what we do, that's great. Honestly, let me say this right. We don't really need the added incentive to, like, hey, we're going to sneak in some apologetics while we learn English. I mean, they want apologetics. Yeah, learning English is great too, and especially learning the more technical terms. Inevitably with apologetics, you start talking about more technical terms of the trade, and they need that familiarity if they're going to be conversant internationally. So yeah, there is an aspect of that that I hadn't thought of, but it's a great idea.
Cynthia, I think you're next.
Okay. Thanks for a great presentation. I have two specific questions. Number one, since you have course material, are they available for Sunday school use in the United States? Because we are teaching a youth Sunday school, preparing for a bunch going off to college pretty soon.
Yes. So we'd be happy to share what you would get. So we create our own materials. So we'd be happy to share our PowerPoint slides that go through each of those classes in our course.
Okay, great.
So just again, go to our website, fill out the contact us. In the message, just say, I'd love to get your slides. I would say if you give us another 4 weeks, we'll be done with this current term, and all of our slides will be refreshed, and we've tried to do a better job this go around making them consistent, so they'll be a better package. But yes, we'd be happy to share those with you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
We actually, incidentally, we've recorded every one of the classes. So theoretically, we could share the links to the recorded classes. So anybody, anywhere could go through our course.
Okay.
We've been surprised a bit. Ratio Christi, you guys all know Ratio Christi. They have some training, but they've actually turned to us because they've seen the course that we've created as being really perfect for their chapter leaders.
Okay. The second question about going internationally, I don't know, since you came on board in January, you realize RTB is trying to start a chapter in Hong Kong. I don't know if you have heard about that or not.
I'm very excited about the international expansion.
And we might need your help because from what I heard, because Hong Kong is my hometown, by the way.
Nice.
Hugh and First Runner are going to India, and we thought it would be a great idea for them to stop by Hong Kong before or afterwards to actually run a series of conferences. So you may know Hong Kong English is not a problem at all for most of the church leaders. And there are already a substantial amount of apologetics material, but to really strengthen that is very important. So I don't know whether you have any plan to go yourself to help on the ground or beforehand. Just want to hear your opinion on that.
All right, so let me do this. I'm going to put on my RTB hat, just to be clear. So now I'm speaking as the chapter's coordinator. So right now, my responsibilities are pretty focused on North America. So mostly the US, a little bit with some of the Canadian chapters. The strategy for expanding internationally with RTB has been to develop this is how I understand it, by the way, is to develop, like RTB Asia is like an affiliate ministry that's tied to RTB, but it's its own entity, and they will be managing the growth of the chapters from there. Now, I think I can help them, but there's probably going to eventually be an RTB Asia chapter coordinator doing what I'm doing for the United States chapters, doing for Asia. When that's going to happen, I don't know, but
I
I'm
thought,
certainly-
Ben, I thought there already was one, that the fellow in India, isn't he?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Is he still doing it, or is he?
Well, I think he's doing like just about everything.
Okay.
So yes, he's wearing multiple hats. But yes, that's the idea, that they would localize, they would localize the chapter developments more from there than from here.
And
Yeah,
do you actually, Ben, do you actually know Cynthia?
Yes, I know her name, but we've not met face to
Yeah,
face like
she's-
this.
She is, I think Cynthia is the only RTB fellow.
No, there is additional one now. There's Miller.
Okay, so
Forgot his name.
she's not just a scholar, but she's also a fellow now. So
Yeah.
and
So-
she was with NASA for like 30 years. So
Very good. So
Uh,
Cynthia, would you happen to know a young man named Andrew Locke?
I know of him, but I have not met him personally. And he is
Yeah.
one of the people we like to contact to get
Yes.
something ongoing, because we are trying to look for venues for the conference right now.
Yes,
And apparently we have problem getting into the universities, because you have very little people familiar with RTB in Hong Kong on the ground. I've been in the United States for more than 50 years, so I plan to return at the same time if the conference starts over there. But still, I need people. I'm trying to contact my people in Hong Kong as much as I could, but still
Yeah.
everything is done remotely.
Well, I would definitely reach out to Andrew. He was a guest on,
Yes.
let's see, I can't remember. There was a big
It was the
event.
workshop he was on.
The workshop, yes, he was on, and his name is growing quite a bit. He's actually also just starting a course that he's offering, kind of similar to our course, but so I'm excited about him, and I'm not sure, how on board he is with every one of RTB's distinctive, but I think it's close enough that he would be a great partner. And I think he's in either Hong Kong or Singapore. I can't remember
He's in
where.
Hong Kong. He's actually a faculty at Baptist University.
Okay, yeah.
We actually have two other scholars. One is resident in Hong Kong now. His name is Zachary Leung. He has been a visiting scholar. And the
Mhm.
other one is still in Arizona, is Alan, forgot his last name for a sudden. Alan Lee, I think. He's also has been a visiting scholar. And those two, they return to Hong Kong much more frequently than I do, and they're trying very hard to put a thing together. But I think they became Christians after they came to the States. That's why they have very little contact in the Christian circles in Hong Kong.
Mhm.
And I am trying to dredge out my 50-year-old contacts to help them. So if there's anything you could do to contact Andrew Locke, to be extremely useful.
I actually, this is a funny story. I actually met Andrew. You guys know Justin Brierley, right? From Unbelievable.
Yes.
Yes.
So I was visiting Justin, and he invited me to sit in the studio while he did a podcast with Andrew. So I was, if you listen to the Unbelievable with Andrew Locke and I can't remember the atheist guy, but I was sitting in the studio in a little corner, just listening in, being a fly on the wall. So that's my association with Andrew Locke.
Okay. But that's also to do with maybe a simultaneous release of my translation of Navigating Genesis.
Yay.
So that's why there's this a collision of
Okay. Thank you. Now I'm connecting the dots because I just saw the cover design for that.
yes.
I just saw it circulating around. So you did the translation for that?
Most of it with a lot of help with many people around the world.
Yeah.
to
Thank
do
you
the
for that.
editorial. We are coming to the last stretch right now. Essentially in reviewing the notes, which is the last thing an editor would do.
Wonderful.
Are there any other questions for Ben?
Looks like John's got another question. Go for it.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, I do. Put on your RTP hat, please.
Uh-oh.
Okay, as the director chapter coordinator,
Yes.
I would like to hear and get a overview of the RTB headquarters vision and strategy. I have never heard about it. I go to the website, I see all of this training materials and stuff like that. But then from a strategy point of view, how is RTB's answer to some of the atheist thoughts and philosophies that's rampant in the United States? And what role can RTB do? You can only pick certain areas. What's their plan?
Mhm.
That would be of interest to us, because we have so many different chapters in US. We do a great job in educating the people that attend these monthly meetings. But then I'm not sure what happens after that. How are we, each one of us, engaging in our society in a collective, effective way? For example, the problem you're trying to solve abroad, I think should be focused in US as well. I mean, the problem is bigger in US than abroad. If you
Yes.
can't solve the problem here in US, how is it that we can solve the problem abroad? Only with the help of the Holy Spirit. And maybe that's the way, God is directing us. But we have people like you burning with passion, but do we have people like you in RTB staff burning with passion to catapult what you've started to focus on United States? For example, you mentioned about educating high school people or educating the youth leaders in our churches to be concerned about, to equip our students in apologetic philosophy so that when they leave and go to college, they're better equipped to defend their own faith. I mean, those are the big questions in my mind, in where I am serving in my church, et cetera, so on and so forth. But I have not heard any response or position from RTB how they can address that.
Well, those are big questions. Those are really good questions. Let me speak from AOM's standpoint first. So I totally am with you to say that the need that AOM is trying to fulfill beyond the West, that need is right here at home as well. And in fact, most of my journey as an apologist has been focused here at home, right? It's only when the Lord opened up these doors internationally and gave me a taste of the need in places like Uganda that I decided that was really my calling, because there's hardly anybody doing what Apologetics on Mission is actually doing. There's hardly anybody taking apologetics, to places like Uganda. There are some. There's lots of people that are capable of doing that here at home. So I agree we need to work harder to to take all this great material and get it out into the hands of the people that really need it. So I'm 100% with you on the strategy. I think, speaking from the chapter's perspective, part of my heart's desire and stepping into this role as helping chapters is I want us collectively to work together to do what you're talking about more effectively as chapters. I've only been on the job here for 90 days, so I'm still just getting my feet wet in the basics. But I hope that over time, I can work with chapter leaders to really be more effective in in extending RTB's impact. As far as RTB in general, I'm a little bit reluctant to speak on big picture strategy because I'm just not the person to do that. But I can echo what I hear publicly all the time. And one of the key strategies that RTB has is to grow the scholar community. So the scholar community is a network of highly academically trained researchers and and practitioners in specific areas. Most of it is in STEM, but not all of it, who adhere to the basic RTB message. And by joining the scholar community, they serve as ambassadors, and they find a network that they can turn into, and they can then leverage to grow their community. So I think establishing the credibility that comes with a large scholar community, all professionals and highly trained academically in their fields, saying, this is true. That is a loud voice. And it's a voice that over time, as that scholar community grows, I think is going to be pretty effective and give great credibility to the RTB message. Tactically, how do we get that, more broadly communicated? Well, penetrating into the universities through the scholar communities, penetrating into the churches, and I think that's an area where chapters can be really effective. And I hope to have more to say about that and our strategy as chapters on how we can be part of this, in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I know you're relatively new, so you don't want to rock the boat too much, but you can always say, hey, from your meeting with your chapters around the country, these are the voices you've been hearing, and convey that up to the management. So therefore you wash your hand, right? These are their voices. And so they would like to hear a strategy. I've heard this, the scholar community from Hugh Ross a couple of years ago, but I think there are other areas RTB can get involved in. It's not promoting the RTB name. It's not necessarily promoting the RTB philosophy. I think what we should be promoting is to create faithful Christians, young Christians who can defend their faith and let God take care of growing them. But we have to give them the tools, because when we talk about apologetics, it's not just RTB talking about apologetics, but Young Earth talk about apologetics also. I was just listening to Ken Hand's video the other day. He talks about apologetics. So what kind of apologetics are we talking about? So all of these things they need to understand all the different things so that when they're confronted with secular philosophies, they know how to handle that. So we can glorify God. It's not to push the RTB philosophy, but is to get them grounded in the Bible and to have confidence in God's promises.
Yeah, amen. I mean, I won't disagree with what you're saying. I think it's all a question of, what specific role has RTB been called into as a ministry? Where do they really excel? How do they fit into the broader apologetics community, at large? How do we all work together? And for me, and I think, what I'm hearing from you, and trust me, I'm going around and listening to all the chapter leaders and setting up Zoom calls and meeting with them and giving my listening ear, and trying to coalesce the common denominators to develop a strategy, and in my role, particularly for how chapters can be most effective in the overall mission. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to do that, and I'm excited to work on that with you guys.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the chapters can be effective, but if we can be directed in specific ways with certain processes and methodology already sketched out by the headquarter RTB team, then collectively, then we can basically march together more or less in unison, rather than one chapter doing this, another chapter doing that, and then so this we don't have the impact of working together.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. And I hope that, well, I don't hope, I know that the general trend of what you're talking about is being addressed, and you'll see the fruits of it soon. So I'm being a little bit cagey because I know they're recording, and I am officially on staff. So
Okay, I'm gonna take this opportunity to cut this off. Sorry if anybody has more to say. Maybe you can put your concerns or issues in the form of an email or text to cover it. But I think we need to stop for now. And so let me close this meeting with a word of prayer.
thank you.
Gracious Lord God, we do thank you for the opportunity that we've had to listen to Ben talk about apologetics on mission. We pray for your Holy Spirit to flow over that ministry and to for a mighty harvest around the world, in Uganda and Kenya and all throughout Africa, as well as Brazil, the rest of South America, and now we've heard about the need in Asia as well. The world, we know that the world needs this kind of ministry, and the kind of ministry that we have at Reasons to Believe. And we just pray for your Holy Spirit to flow over all of those ministries, and to fill each one of us as we bring your word to others around the world. Thank you very much, Lord, for all that you've done for us, and we just praise and worship you. And we ask that you go with us now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.